welcome once again to Postcard. We're still in the same official countries of Portugal and Slovakia, and we're quite content, but we're not quite content in one sense because we can't get the jabs, and we did mention this last time, Leigh. And the reason we can't get the jabs is Europe's made a mess of it, and we're entering the higher categories because of age, infirmity.
He is,
yes, or whatever. And you are, because do you know it's just been announced that, breaking news again, 40 plus can now, by the end of March, get the vaccine in the United Kingdom. Now, we've got to look forward, and we're in the high category, apparently, to April, earliest, probably May. Now, as I said last time, when your own doctor phones you up, your own GP in UK, this was now 3 weeks ago, come and get your jab. And I said, we're locked down in Portugal. We thought, oh, crumbs. But the whole storyline here, as you mentioned last time, was £2,700 and odd pounds for going in an Ibis £60 a night hotel, with all the ruptions, plus travel costs. I mean, it's untenable. Now, they're talking, Leigh, about giving 5%, which is a good idea, to countries that can't afford it. For selfish reasons in one respect, because if the world is full of the virus and Western Europe and the States are clear of it and the Far East, makes no difference, it's going to carry on. So perhaps there's method in the madness. I wouldn't call it madness, it's a good idea. But here's a point. Why can't we get our virus jabs from England? Because as we mentioned again, a couple of weeks ago, Gibraltar got it flown in. Lots of expats around the world, lots of expats around the world that are desperate for this and can't get back and have it. So people will say, of course, oh, well, it serves you right, you're resident in that country, you've got to put up with it. No, well, yeah, but we're working here, we've got to come here to work, etc. So we should be able to get the vax because we're still citizens of the United Kingdom.
What can I say? What can I say? I have no idea, really. But I agree with you 100%. That I'm out here looking to do all sorts of things, and I've been quite successful. But yeah, I have houses in Britain. Everything's registered in Britain. I pay tax in Britain. I am a British citizen. I have residency out here, which is a totally different thing. That means I don't have to leave the country every 3 months. And yeah, why can't I was allowed to go back to Britain, as you know, to make a documentary for a well-known company just before Christmas. I had special exemption, and that meant I didn't have to. I had to have a test when I arrived in the country. I was allowed then to go to the hotel that was booked for me. The next day I got the test results. Well, what is wrong, right, with me flying into Britain, as I did, and instead of having a test, having a jab? What's wrong with that? I am a British citizen. I am a resident in a foreign country. I pay my tax to that country. Therefore, they should look after me. I still pay in to the National Health Service. Why can't I get some health service in the national land that I come from? I'll shut up now.
Well, no, you won't shut up. I'll get you even more now and mention Harry and Meghan, because Harry can come over again. Breaking news. It looks as though it's curtains for the royal bit, and they've decided that he's not going to get any help with all his assets in Britain, and he's got to stay where he is. The power of a woman.
I know. Women are so powerful. I know. I came out here to get away from one. Then she followed me. Ooh, I'll be dead for that one.
You're being
anyway, no, right, Harry. Yeah, I think Harry and Meghan Markle are probably one of the most shameful couples in walking today. I don't mean the criminals, I don't mean the perverts, I don't mean the anything despicable in that way, but I think they are shameful in their complete dishonesty. And based that very briefly on the fact, if you go to the Leigh Banks Preservation Society, have a look on there. We have a piece on there about the fact that they demand privacy all the time. So what they did, they put out a photograph of a pregnant, whatever she's called, I've forgotten now, Meghan. They put a photograph of her pregnant, lying incumbent in the garden with those shoes on her in a sundress and looking fabulous, a dusty sun in the sky. And then they say, yeah, well, that was a selfie. No, it wasn't a selfie because your arms aren't that long. What it was a Vogue photographer who took that picture. Then they dished it out to all the newspapers like that. I said, oh, look, they put it on the front page, disgusting. Well, they did that on purpose because you know what, Meghan and Harry, if you hadn't told the world you were pregnant, nobody would have known. And it wouldn't matter. But now Harry's broken another boundary because his granddad or whatever he is, Prince Philip. I've met Prince Philip. He was I really enjoyed my time with Prince Philip. If you wish me to tell you about that, you can ask me after. But anyway, he's decided, oh my goodness, my Prince Philip, my Prince Charming is very, very ill and he's 100 years old and he might not survive. So I must self-isolate in California in my luxury pad with the swimming pool and every servants and all the stars surrounding me. I'll just go into bed and then I can fly back to Britain to go and see Prince Philip. Well, you should pay as well as all these poor people having to pay to go into a lockdown in Britain when you arrive. That is using the power of your relatives and the power that you have because of your celebrity, which you keep claiming you don't want and keep suing newspapers for using your celebrity. Grow up! Do you want to know about Prince Philip now? What about him?
Later. No, there are reasons for that. And I'm going to get you even more. Well, I mean, now you've got this nice doctor there, haven't you? Just around the corner you found.
He's lovely.
I know, but I hope he's got plenty of blood pressure tablets, mate, because you're going to need them.
I'll just have a sip of coffee.
Yeah, have a slip of coffee or a sip of coffee.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to get you going, as I say again, because I'm a little disturbed because I get all the newspapers, especially from UK, some from Spain, some from Portugal. They're the main sources of what we are commenting on. And I am a little perturbed about the difference between the truth and comment. And I think it's getting worse. You don't, I know, but I do. So when you read, as an example, I mentioned The Guardian because they've got an exclusive this week we're going to go on to shortly, which is a goodie. He's not going to like this. He's going to get even higher blood pressure now. And I am consumed with the veracity of some of our dear journals, newspapers, specifically, because I want the truth in news and the whole truth, not a half truth, because one paper's left wing or one paper's right wing. I want the truth on one page and opinion on the other. But we don't get it, Leigh. I can think of many journals, and we're going to mention The Guardian at this stage because we're going to go on to a very good article that The Guardian's written of this nature, but it's a leak and they got hold of it and it was a scoop. Great. But before we get on to that, come on. We want news that is true, unbiased, impartial. I don't want a left-hand view and a right-hand view, and some of it's extreme. That is not the truth. Okay, you can express your opinion on the opposite page and say, well, that's my comment. But you're talking comment and not news. You don't agree with that, do you?
Well, it depends what the story is. There's certain basic news stories have no opinion. That's just the way they are. You know, if there's a car crash, you don't get Keir Starmer saying that was caused by the Tories. If a building burns down, you don't get somebody accusing initially on the story, because thinking about the recent events, it has become a political issue. The political issues within stories depend entirely on what the story is. So it's difficult to say war in Uganda, war anywhere in the world. There's got to be political issues there, and political opinions then ensue because of the political issues. Yeah, if you here's one for you, directly for you, right? If you want truth in news, right? Why don't you buy the new newspaper that Donald Trump is going to start? Now that'll be full of truth. That'll be nothing but the truth. There'll be no fake news in that, will there? No.
Well, this is the difficulty, and the same thing goes, of course, not just newspapers, to broadcast radio and television. They do it a bit more subtly, and well, I say subtly. They're under the cosh to be absolutely neutral. Newspapers aren't. So it is subtly hidden on the BBC News particularly.
Yeah, broadcasters aren't really there to be apolitical. Again, it depends on the story. Let's put it this way. We carried a big piece on the Leigh G. Banks Preservation Society about artificial intelligence and its ramifications to news gathering. And some professor, I can't remember his name, I think he was from a university in Massachusetts, which means you must know what you're talking about. He said very basic, very simply, very straightforwardly, that professional journalists are the keepers of the gateway to the truth of the world. And that's what we do. You see, the differences between citizen journalists, people who go rant on Facebook and lots of other people. We are trained. I'm trained in law. I'm trained in politics. I have qualifications in those subjects. I'm qualified in local government. I have all these qualifications that make me a journalist and give me the ability to analyze and look at news stories. And really, if we weren't allowed to do that, it'd be a bit stupid to have these courses available to us that every newspaper adheres to, the NCTJ, what one of the courses is called, and that's the one I took. I have qualifications in all sorts of things, and I apply them to my job because that's my job, to apply them.
Well, we've mentioned The Guardian and we've mentioned the exclusive story they got hold of. And it was from a think tank, in actual fact, called the Joint Biosecurity Centre.
Yeah.
Now, what wing of politics this comes from, I can only guess, probably correctly, because of what was hidden or what was not said compared with what was said. Now, it's a difficult topic because of our laws in the United Kingdom, so one has to be careful what one says here. But somebody noticed, after 99% of the population in the UK, that there were particular problems with the virus, with COVID, in cities such as Leicester, Blackburn and Bradford. And they were trying to say, well, what was wrong? So they did. This big think tank came along and whispered in the government's ear. And the government says, well, we can't say anything yet because it's highly sensitive, what you found out. But the Guardian got hold of it and published it, or published part of it. But the thing was, a problem arises because there's lots of taxi drivers, there's lots of supermarket workers, etc. And they come up with all the stories, but you step back and think, well, yeah, there's lots of supermarket areas that are not being affected and taxi driver areas throughout the country. And if you go to the low income socio-economic places, there are lots of poorer people there. They don't suffer with those three areas. Now you've got another opportunist reaction to this saying, well, we know why the thing is. And not to put a finer point on it, it's the number of ethnic people in those areas that make the final tipping point. Now, so that we're not, and we've said this many times between us, Leigh, when I see a black person, I don't see a black person. I see a human being. I was brought up in that way, and both of us from Manchester. There's always been lots of people, but not lots of people like there are now. This happened 25 years ago from there, and every government's been guilty of this, of just having open doors. And Europe's catching up now with their open doors policy and finding out similar problems. It's nothing to do with colour, black, white, green, rainbow, whatever. It's the culture. And if you saturate an area, you will get problems. And the big problems here, of course, is the tracing problems, which the government did not get right, but was made very difficult because many of the communities don't want to be traced. They won't snitch. That's their thinking. They want to keep themselves to themselves. It does not work. And we would not have been in this sort of state as a country with hotspots if things had been controlled and people came in order and mixed within the culture to adopt a British culture. And many countries, especially Denmark, have actually said this now, and we've mentioned it in times past. If you are, as an example, and this was stated by one of their ministers, if you're Islam, don't come in and expect to change our culture. You're coming to our country, you've got to change to our culture.
2 points really, which struck me as you were talking. And the first one is, you say that people came in and saturated the area. Well, if the area hadn't been saturated with people from an ethnicity which is British, what would we have saturated it with then? British people. So the saturation thing works anyway. There is a medical reason that a lot of people suffer with COVID, and we've done it a couple of times, and it's been quite well explored. But I agree with you entirely that, yeah, if somebody comes to Britain from another country, then really they can't expect that country to change its ways to make them feel at home. I left Britain and moved to Slovakia. I don't expect Slovakia to represent Britain to me. Certainly, I'm lucky because my Slovak isn't very good, beyond ordering a beer and a glass of wine and saying hello and goodbye. It just isn't that good. And really, I'm fairly ashamed of myself that having been here for 3 years, I've not managed to become part of the community here by learning the language properly. But having said that, there are cultural aspects that I have picked up. There is a different way of shaking hands. There's a different way of presenting when you meet somebody in company. There's a different way of, if somebody invites you to the house, the kind of gift you take with you, which in Britain don't. You just go and drink all the booze and then go home.
Well, how do you shake hands? I'm interested. How do you shake hands in Slovakia?
Well, in England, right, a man meets a man and he shakes hands with the bloke. If his wife is with him, then the wife and the man shake hands. It's just the way things are done in Britain. Over here, it is frowned upon, and you'll get told off if you try to shake the hand of a man before your wife has, and that kind of thing. And there are other really fantastic little cultural differences. Like if you are sitting there at a dinner table and you pick up the bottle of wine and put the wine in your glass, you are automatically classed as an alcoholic. which is funny when you're in one of the biggest, hardest drinking nations in the world.
Yes.
But you have to wait for somebody else to fill your glass. And I've actually sat there with Slovaks looking at me going, like that, somebody to fill the glass for them. And all these little things. I've caught on to those cultural things. I'm not caught on to the language. I'm ashamed of myself. I just should have done better than I have done. Having said that, I'm leaving this country as soon as possible. Not because I hate it, because I'm going to go somewhere else, have a different life. But if you expect, see, let's just take a step back on what you were saying. We brought people from Pakistan, from all parts of the countries we ruled to do jobs that me, didn't want to do.
Well, no, you've got it, Leigh. And what's happened, because our young people should be training, as we both agree, in plumbing, electricity, whatever.
Yeah.
And we've let them go to university to do nothing.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, well, that's not to point the finger at an ethnic community. That's not to say it's because of them. It isn't. It's because of the stupid attitude people in Britain have. You know, people don't want, all people want to do now is go to, and not so much as it used to be, but go to university and do a media course. And then they become media people and don't work, don't get any jobs because they've not really learned anything. They don't know how to operate in a media world. Or they're going to be a computer games designer and things like that. And then they can't sell the games because they're rubbish. They've just learned how to do it. They've got no talent. And they will not go and pick grapes, not grapes, tomatoes, or whatever.
Oh, no, you can pick grapes in Britain. Things have changed.
Yeah, but where the Slovaks and the people from Central and Eastern Europe who went across to Britain, went over there, was to work in the fields doing jobs that we wouldn't do. And the reason they got so well paid is because they'd studied how best to do that kind of job in the fields. They became experts, so they got paid better because they were quicker and more efficient. It is nothing to do with ethnicity, what the things that have happened here. We lived in the 1950s, which I don't know if you remember, I certainly don't. In the 1950s, the British population lived in overcrowded conditions, particularly the Irish communities who moved here. And what we did, ultimately, we started to build houses that were different kinds of houses, and we split families up. Family life started to separate. There was nothing wrong with going and living in a different city and you abandoned your grandparents. Now, the majority of people over here from other countries have come from countries. We lived in India for a long time, and not for a long time, but quite a long time. And over there, families lived cheek by jowl with each other. It is their way of being. And they should not lose that element of the culture just because they came to do the jobs we didn't do, because they got no work in their countries and they wanted to better their lives and they built businesses.
I agree with you. It's not their fault. But where's the government in all this? The government pays you, an individual, a young person, £70+ a week for sitting at home. So why shouldn't he? In Holland, it's even worse. It's double that money. No wonder we have to get, inverted commas, workers from elsewhere. The whole thing is stacked against, and it's come back to bite us now. COVID again is revealing the truth.
COVID has been a great leveler on many levels. And it has revealed all sorts of strangenesses and revealed all the kinds of things which ultimately could benefit our communities and our world generally. The fact that people now are starting to work from home more. Really, they now will have to have different tax elements brought in because of the usage of their homes as an office. There is tax relief areas already, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. So things have to be looked at. They're going to be better off because they're not travelling into, people pay hundreds of pounds a month to go to work. So they're hundreds of pounds a month better off because of it. All these things have to be built into our social system to make things work. The fact that all these properties are becoming free in city centres, particularly in London, where these mammoth tower blocks that are worth billions are suddenly becoming actually redundant. What do we do with them? This is the great reset that is actually happening to us now. And yeah, the COVID has done this. Everybody looks on COVID as this negative thing. It certainly is a negative thing. But we got to a situation with our world. We polluted the world. We polluted the skies. We've done all this, and COVID has even started to ease that as a problem and show us other ways. COVID hasn't all been bad.
I hope besides being a pinko, you're not going to be a greeno. Come on, Leigh. There's no hope for us. I'm going to move on.
I'm just thinking before you do.
Go on.
If you mix pinko and greeno, what colour do you get?
Puce.
I'm a puso.
Oh dear. Right. We have a go at the dear old UK. A lot of the expatriates called it yuck for short. That's a bit cruel. We do things very well in lots of ways. Yeah. And let's blow the old UK trumpet for a second, because if you're in Spain and Portugal, and if you work for yourself, as an example, in a restaurant, you're just abandoned practically by the government. The actual help you get is zilcho, a teeny bit, but practically zilcho. And restaurants and bars are going bump by the 1,000 in Spain, and other workers as well. Yeah. Now in Britain, of course, Rishi, who is also from an ethnic minority, has come along and been so generous, and he's kept a lot of the bars and pubs, although they have other problems. They're going to go down, lots of them already are. But at least you can get help from the British state. And as we speak, literally, I've just got another ticker up saying that Rishi is going to make an announcement saying that the furlough will increase to the summer. And that's good news for lots and lots of people, for employees and restaurant owners or whatever. And the rates relief is probably going on to summer as well. Not definite, but we believe that's what's going to happen. Now, that is brilliant. So well done. I don't know whether we can afford it. We're obviously going to have to rely on the money tree of Diane. But in the end, we've got years to pay it back. Perhaps we'll have to accept the fact that we've got to pay for our virus. We're not going to mention your hero, who strums a guitar and has got a Nobel Prize. So we won't mention him, but I think I've given enough clues who he is. His first name starts with B, second name D, but we're not going to mention him. We're going to mention the Bruce.
Now, Bruce Springsteen, not done for drinking and driving.
No, he's our hero. Well, he was. Until
he's a naughty boy.
He's a naughty boy. I think they had to spend 35 million to get that advert going in prime time Super Bowl. And I understand they actually got $10 million for that advert. And then, yes, back to sinning. He did. And they've had to take it all down. Come on, our heroes are fallen.
I know, yeah. It's sad really. But he shouldn't have done it, should he? He just shouldn't have done it. The advert was a very good thing. And as we're not mentioning his royal bobness, I will mention Lord Bob of Dylan, and we'll just mention Royal Stupid and Springsteen. And His Royal Bobblers did the Super Bowl ads about a decade ago and did very well. He also started doing ads for Victoria's Secrets, a lingerie company for some reason. Then he did big cars and things like that. He's a businessman. Now, Bruce Springsteen has followed suit, and a lot of people are, doing the same sort of thing. And yet, unlike Harry and Meghan, capitalize on your celebrity. Do it. Be honest. Be straightforward. I'm a celebrity. I want to make money. But you've got to be careful in that position that you don't go and, unfortunately, and sadly, and perhaps without even realizing, have too many schnifters while you're doing it, and they get stopped by the police and get done. It's a sad, sad story. Bruce Springsteen is probably one of the most exciting live performers, still at 70 years old, that there is. But he's tarnished it's an old rock and roll thing, isn't it? Yeah, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Well, yeah, brilliant, but a 70-year-old, you're an old age.
Yeah, he should have grown up by now, and Bob's reached nearly 80, of course. So
and still going, still having #1 hits. Amazing. Even the Royal Frank crooning Sinatra wasn't having #1 hit albums at 80. Don't think he was actually alive, was he? He might have been. Don't know. Elvis didn't have it. He's still on the moon, isn't he? On Mars, where the what's it landed.
Yes, which takes us nicely onto the Mars landing, because we're having a day of breaking news, and I'm going to show it. Leigh, have a look at this. You'll love this.
Velocity is about 550 meters per second at an altitude of about 15 kilometers from the surface.
Yes.
The navigation has confirmed that the parachute has deployed, and we are seeing significant deceleration in the velocity. Our current velocity is 440 meters per second at an altitude of about 12 kilometers from the surface of Mars. Now has radar lock on the ground. Current velocity is about 100 meters per second, 6.6 kilometers of the surface of Mars. We have confirmation that the lander vision system has produced a valid solution and part of terrain relative navigation. We have timing of the landing engines. We have confirmation that the back shell has separated. We are currently performing the divert maneuver. Current velocity is about 75 meters per second at an altitude of about 1 kilometer off the surface of Mars.
Here in Safety Bravo.
We have completed our terrain relative navigation. Current speed is about 30 meters per second, altitude of about 300 meters off the surface of Mars. Skycrane maneuver has started. About 20 meters off the surface. Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the sands of past life. At this point, the descent stage has flown away to a safe distance. Perseverance is continuing to transmit direct through Mars Iconic Orbiter to Earth.
There we go then, and look at that. There was a woman driver in charge of that, and she made it. And, I'll get in trouble again. But I'll tell you what, we must advise the viewers that when they see things like parachutes, and I didn't think there was enough atmosphere actually on Mars to get a parachute. But there again, there it goes. The actual background, I understand, was footage, but when you saw the actual vehicle, of course, that's been put on there artificially. But that's a brilliant landing. There wasn't somebody flying around with the camera looking at it. And I understand also that it landed, and you don't see it on that shot, very heavily, but it was properly put together and it survived, and everything apparently is working. So they're going to look for little men and little women.
And little women. Nothing wrong with little women. Very good book.
Yes. And they expect this to last many years. And
Yeah, what are they doing up there?
well, they're looking for life.
This is an anecdote, but I once had a very big old house, a gigantic place, and it had 21 rooms. And I'd just got divorced and I'd got no money and I'd lost my job. So I filled it with all sorts of people. Anybody who needed a room, I just filled it like that. And it was at the time when there was all this conspiracy theories about aliens coming down to Earth and hiding amongst the community. And I was standing in my local hostelry at the time, and they were talking about it. And one of these blokes in the pub, in a waggish way, said, well, yeah, but if there's all these aliens on the Earth, where are they all? And this bloke says, they're all living at Leigh Banks's house.
Yes, probably right as well. Okay.
Why go up there looking for life? Why do we want to find life on other planets when we are in such a situation that life is in danger on this planet? Now, really, yeah, we need to explore space, but surely it's like John Steinbeck going to the Sea of Cortez. He didn't have to do it; it was a luxury. And surely, at this moment in the history of the world, going to places like Mars is a luxury that we genuinely even can't afford.
Well, it was $3 billion almost to get it there. A lot of money, Leigh.
Could have gone to Blackpool for less.
Yes, probably. Right. Let's go to the WHO.
The WHO?
No, not the pop group, the World Health Organization. What a shambles. What a joke. The footage that's coming out of there, they've hidden all sorts of things that is beyond dispute. Well, some people dispute it. But when they got these famous people to go around, famous scientists, and check out all the data, suddenly there was no data. So what they saw was a sanitized version of perhaps an animal lab or whatever they perceived caused this in the first place. And even at the press conference straight after, they wouldn't let journalists interview these scientists. And they were shouting, the journalists, do you suspect any cover up here? And they weren't allowed to ask it. No. It's all been stage managed. It's ridiculously.
It's something, again, like I say, COVID has done some good things in a roundabout way. And it's exposed a lot of inadequacies in very many areas that would never have been exposed. And the WHO organization, like you say, not the band, has always had a reputation that precedes it, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And nobody really gave too great of interest to it. Now it's being held up to scrutiny, and things are coming out that that need looking into. There are going to be inquiries and everything. Now, at this point, you have to be reasonable, and this is like using a journalistic head. You have to be fairly reasonable, because WHO is going through extraordinary times, just like the rest of the world, and most of the accusations about its peccadillos are about what's happening or has happened in these times. Now, Facebook's full of accusations about WHO. Why? Yes. While you're reading Donald Trump's paper, which is full of everything other than fake news, you could also go to Facebook and read all the news on there that's absolutely honest and true. But Facebook and all other social media are attacking the World Health Organization beyond belief. Let's have a real, truthful inquiry into what they've done. And as far as Wuhan is concerned, that was more to do with the secrecy of that country. Now, not even that it wanted to hide anything, or that necessarily it had anything to hide. The decision is that actually it wasn't something that was manufactured COVID wasn't manufactured in a laboratory and then thrown out of the window to get the rest of the world. That it was something that happened really tragically. And journalists, were kept away from that story. And what happens in those cases, that a country like that will be pilloried in so many ways that their credibility will be taken away. They're getting exposed for their attitudes to freedom of speech, freedom of movement, all the freedoms of the world that we all hold close. I just have to say something. This is quite incredible. Today is the warmest day we've ever had in Poprad for the last 3 months. We're actually above freezing. And there's a giant spider crawling up the wall. Just thought that's on.
That's why Andrea wants to get out of the place. I know now what it is.
No, but it's big. It's big like that.
Oh my goodness me. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Robert the Bruce had one of those. Talking about the Wicked Witch of the North. Oh my goodness. Well,
she's from Wolverhampton.
Oh my goodness. She's done it again. There's been reports coming out this week that the hospitals, the health situation generally, the number of drugs being taken in Scotland, the fact that she was instrument, and we've mentioned this before, to make sure every child in Scotland has a godparent, which just happened to be a member of the state officialdom. And her performance figures are appalling compared with Britain as a whole. So she's not got good, well, she's got a good track record, and that's on independence. And it seems to be finding her out. And as again we mentioned last week, it's a toss of the coin whether she's still there for the election coming up very shortly. Now, why mention the wonderful Nicola? Well, hate speech came into the whole situation there, where one of her chief ministers actually said, I want to grant permission to people to go into police to go into people's houses. And if they suspect that hate speech is going on in a private dwelling. And I thought, that's the end of the road, Nicola. You've really blown it. They're backing down, fortunately, but the intention was there. And blow me, Leigh, I found the same thing happening in United Kingdom. Under the law commissioners, which of course are very clever judges and barristers and lawyers, and they're actually trying, and again, it's hoped that they will back down, to bring that law into the whole country, that you cannot speak out even in your own car with your own brother or sister if it's hate speech. Now, how they're going to enforce it, how they're going to find out, I don't know, but they'll find a way. What stupidity. I thought these were intelligent, reasonable people.
Well, these are the reasonable people who think that artificial intelligence is a good thing. It'll wipe us out. It'll kill us all. But yeah, it's a bizarre thing. Yes, in a real world, well, not in a real world, in an ideal world, people wouldn't have. You know, I don't think I've ever spoken to any of my family at any stage in all my life about in a way that could be considered to be hate speech. I've talked about politics. I've talked about racism. I've talked about war. I don't think I've ever tried to incite in my family any kind of reaction or hatred. And really, in a proper world, that's the way it should be. Having said that, we all know that people do talk in a racist and a hateful way about people to the families. Should they be allowed to do it? Well, no, they shouldn't be allowed to do it. But what? No,
but I know what you're saying, Leigh, and it's absolutely correct. We just don't talk that way in a civilized household. But you don't have to be uncivilized now, because, well, it all started with the Lawrence inquiry about 20 years ago and the Macpherson report. And that went completely over the top. And what's coming out now is actually the fact that if you, well, we've all heard of Mr. Miller that was warned very recently, we think you are not thinking correctly. That's what the police officer said. In other words, re-education is the first thing that spreads to mind, like China. It's the fact that if out of the whole thing has come the fact that you don't have to say anything in that case, but if it's perceived by the person that you're upsetting, that it's a hate speech, then you'll have your collar felt. Now that is ridiculous. I'll give you an example. This was quite a few years ago. We were called to film in an arts centre a band. The lead singer of the band was a very attractive lady. And so we focused the camera on the lead singer, who was an attractive lady. Wasn't a lady, Leigh. It was a fella that wanted to be a lady. That's all right. We filmed him. We took the thing away. We edited it. I am pursued by everybody from him because he didn't want to be shown as a trans. He felt we were focusing the camera just on him because he was a man dressed up as a woman. And boy, he threatened me. Now, that was real threats. And I had to go to the local Nick and point this out. Now, in those days, the local Nick was sensible, feet on the ground, and said, we'll make sure that he doesn't repeat these threats again. And it was done and gone. No longer, Leigh, would that exist. I'd have had my collar felt because he perceived me to be focusing on him as the director of the program. What ludicrousy. What are we into now? How's it changed like this?
Well, it's things like that. You see, again, it's an historical thing. Rock and roll, rock music, pop music, popular music over the centuries has always been populated by people of an androgynous nature. And you look at Mick Jagger, totally, and Bob Dylan, totally androgynous in the early parts. David Bowie, go back into history, and it's all based really on the fact that men played women in that. So that kind of androgynousness, it's not a trans world really. It's an historical part of art and presentation and entertainment. Now, for somebody who was portraying that, from what you were saying, in the days of Boy George, then he should be proud of what he was portraying. And for you to have focused on him as the lead singer in a band, well, who else what are you supposed to do? Focus on the roadie standing at the back of the stage? Of course you're going to focus on the lead singer, particularly if he's interesting and presenting a character of with some controversy, and if it fitted in with his music. Here's a very small example that in a way works. White faces in theatre, entertainment, and all sorts of presentation have always been very, very popular. And they're there for a reason. It goes back to the laughing face and the crying face, masks of original theatre. And I was talking to a chap who is very proud of the fact that he is presenting his performance art in a mask, a white mask. And I asked him why, and he didn't know. He had no idea. He didn't know that Bob Dylan wore a white mask in the 60s, in the 70s. He didn't really know about David Bowie. He didn't know about all the history of it. And really, in that case, I think this bloke who pursued you didn't really know why he was doing it, because he should have been proud of what you did for him.
Well, indeed, but that's how it is, and it's got out of hand, Leigh. I don't really fully agree with you on the androgyny bit. I think there's a minority. Certainly Bowie comes into that section, and Boy George. But I think the vast majority of the pop bands don't. The danger here, of course, is what goes on in many libraries, both in Britain and America, where youngsters are told to go to the library. There's a new book coming out, and they are introduced to drag queens who sit the little ones on their lap and get their culture, inverted commas, into the scene. No, object to that. Personally, Leigh, I think it's absolutely wrong. Don't brainwash our kids.
And again, you see, just to hasten quickly back to the androgyny of rock and pop, particularly rock music. Yeah, certainly Bob Dylan was seen as androgynous, and it was in that category. Most rock stars, the reason for the long hair of being a rock star is because of this androgynous, wild, ethereal quality. And throughout the history of rock music, that's what's been there. It is part of the history of theatre and music, and you can't remove that from it. Now, drag queens actually are in the same thing. They're musical. That goes back over 2 centuries. Again, it comes out of the same historic movement of art and entertainment. And you can't remove it from that aspect because you're removing history. For it to be something that's introduced to children, if it's done in a salacious, if it's done in a perverted way, if it's done in a misleading fashion, then yeah, it's something that needs investigating and needs looking into, needs exposing, if you forgive that word in the case. It's something that needs checking out. But to remove the history of the whole of theatre, another of my qualifications, that I was a member of the National Youth Theatre for a long time. So I'm quite well, and I studied drama and theatre for a long time. So I do understand these things. And there is so much of our history that is being dragged down to its knees and exposed and attacked by people who no longer understand what happened in the past and how these things grew.
Well, I think I know what you're saying, but there's a whole difference between a pantomime Dane and what is being inculcated to our youngsters today, which is plainly sexual. It is backed up by many instances, on many occasions, by LGBT. And they have got a right to say what they want. But we don't appear these days to have a right to say what the other part of the argument, because it's seen as hate speech, which is what I'm collating everything together here. You try and have a go, Leigh, and you're in problems in Britain.
I agree with you. I think you're right. I can see exactly where you're coming from. Well, you're having your say now. You had to build a television.
I feel a darn sight safer having my say in Spain and Portugal and many parts of Europe who have not got the problem. We have gone completely over the top in Britain, and even Boris and co have decided that that is true. And of course, they're now going into universities and saying, forget this cancel culture. You might not agree with it, but you're not going to stop any speakers because they oppose what you're doing too. Unfortunately, certain sections of society, the activists they're called, whatever that means these days, that have got far too much power and have taken advantage of stupid laws that have been put in place. There's where we are, Leigh. Whether we can ever get back, I don't know. But time has gone. And a couple of very quickies for you. And that is,
I like a
first of all, you like quickie. Amazon have been found out. They've been found out years ago, actually, but it's got worse now. Never mind the stars that you see on Amazon products. 5-star rating, 4-star rating, buy this. They can be bought for $5 a time. And Amazon now are in a mess trying to, because they're trying to get hold of these false people. Well, you don't have to try Amazon. It's dead easy. You go and anybody can find it through the internet. Who are these people that are doing this? And they get, it costs £5. That's nothing to get your product sold. What's the answer, Leigh? Amazon got too much power. Don't they really care? They saying they're caring and trying to do it. Well, I'll do it for them.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I was just thinking about something there. This kind of culture that Amazon and other related places are bringing. You see, what we've lost again, just going back to history. We were a nation of shopkeepers, apparently, and what we did was very, very good as far as shopkeeping was concerned. We were polite. We got people the goods that they wanted. We made sure the goods were there. The reason I hesitated at the beginning, because it just struck me, the glorious Andrea bought herself a very expensive handbag on through the internet. It wasn't Amazon, but it was a similar organisation, and it was delivered to her. Now, if you'd have spent a couple of £100 on a handbag in a shop in Britain, you would have been treated like a queen. And in here on the internet, she got the wrong handbag in the wrong colour, and part of it was missing. That's the problem that Amazon has caused in this world. Just the whole of the internet has dumbed down this world. Service, social media has turned everybody into racist bullies. The self-publishing on the internet has destroyed the art of literature. And the art of service has gone out the window. You're quite right.
Good man. Well, if you ever go back to UK to live, don't go to Brighton.
Brighton?
He says no. He says don't go to Brighton. Well, out of the Brighton hospitals, especially the maternity departments, have come the following: you cannot breastfeed anymore. You've got to chest feed. Now, this is going back to the transgender issue. I mean, Leigh, where are we?
It is. It's a stupid situation. I'm just trying to read something on the subject, but I can't find it. I've got something up on my screen about it.
Take your glasses off. You'll find it immediately.
Yeah, no, that's it. Anyway, yes, I can't find it. The situation is a ludicrous situation. It's outrageous. Why have you got a chest feed? It's one thing that men still can't do. You know, we know we can cook, we can sew, we can make flowers grow, we can do everything, but we can't breastfeed. So surely be called that.
Well, I'll go one step further, and this we must finish, and that's a conversation I had yesterday with the Isle of Wight Council, from whence we come.
Oh, right,
Yes, and they've got a form for me to fill in. I won't bore you with the details, but I will eventually, because it is a good story. But this form, it starts off with a drop-down box, and are you sort of Mr. and Mrs. and whatnot? The first thing is, are you a reverend? Second thing is, are you a lord? Are you a lady? And it goes on. And eventually it says MX. You're MX, I'm an X, because it means you're either a Mr., a Mrs., or a Ms. Now, I blame America for all this. We're at the bottom box after all the lords and ladies and anybody can imagine, sir and whatnot, because of the daft lobby. And this dear lady that I questioned about this said, well, we've got a very strong LGBT group on the Isle of Wight, and they've had to put it because of that. Way. Now, I blame America, of course. It all started off with Hollywood when the Ms. things came out. Stupid, you're either a Miss or a Mrs. or a Mr. What have we got now? The drop box that long. And the personal pronoun box, of course, is 100. I mean, mad. We've got more important things to bother about, Leigh. Let's get normality back, not just for COVID, but everything else.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's why you could look at it as quaint. It doesn't have to make you angry. It could be quite quaint. I don't see the point in it. I think it is pandering to people who demand to be totally different in every way. You see, the thing is, and you will not agree with me on this, I don't see gay people as that different. You know, it's just that's a lifestyle that has either been put upon them or they've chosen. And if that's the way they want to live, that's fine. Like I say, if it doesn't create any kind of problem, then yeah, and if they want to be called MX, let them be called MX. What does it matter?
When these activist groups, let them call, you know, if people want to be one way or another, that's fine. But when they cross the line and impose it on the rest of society, and the majority of people will say, no, I don't want that enforcing on my kids. I don't want my kids being brainwashed from age 4, reading instead of Janet and John books, John and Harry books, which is in our primary school. But no need for it. If you want to do your own thing, do your own thing. Don't force it on the children in our schools, because there's many groups, I'm afraid, that are doing this. Leigh, we've got to stop, mate. I know you want to come in, but
I have one announcement to make, which is very important, and it's important for this show. I just want to say immediately before we finish that next week we need to look into the HSBC Bank and the way they have treated one family. And I say this in quotes, the way they have stolen money off one of those people and treated this family in totally different ways over exactly the same problem. We will be exposing not only what they've done, we will also be exposing the fact that they are at this moment trying to avoid having anything to say on it. Well done, HSBC. I'm an investigative journalist. I am investigating you. Sorry about that.
That was all right. That's the promo for next week. I'll let him do that as long as he lets me have a go at Barclays and Sabadell Bank in Spain.
Absolutely.
This we really agree on. Leigh, as usual, a great pleasure.
It was. It's been brilliant. It's been absolutely worth doing. Let's do it again next week. And get the HSBC and Barclays and all the other bankers.